Next question asks, how can both the city and the county allow 4 groups to decide the entire Allegheny Highlands consolidation plan when there is conflict of interest found on the school boards and the councils?
Definitively have, what are the conflicts of interest today?
I don't think it defines it. As far as how, I think we can look to our own history in our own backyard. Clifton Forge and Allegheny County consolidated their school districts in the exact same manner that we're following. And the reason we're following that is not because of our own prerogative, because that's the prescription in the law. When 2 localities come together and talk about consolidating schools, the system, the code allows for the 2 localities and their respective school boards to come together in negotiations to entertain that idea. So I think that's the first part. And as far as the conflicts of interest and the like, conflicts of interest are pretty narrowly defined in Virginia code as it relates to say someone voting when they have a family member in the division, something like that. I do know off the top of my head one of the specific exceptions to that is if your family member is a part of a group of 3 or more folks within that school division. So, conflicts of interest aren't always exactly what they seem to be, especially when a given decision affects a wide body of folks.
I would like to chime in there on a conversation I had the other day with Steve Bennett on the Board of Supervisors. Mr. Bennett told me that when he was very early on in his career on the Board of Supervisors, that there was a question that came before them that was rather controversial, and that he went to a woman's house in his district and he knocked on her door and he said, "What do you think I should do, and what are your thoughts on this?" And she pointed at him and she said, "That's why I put you in there, because you know all the information and all the things that I may not know. So that's why I want you to make that decision for me." Well, Steve Bennett was it for everybody.
This is not something we've been doing behind closed doors forever. I mean, these things have been all publicized. People have every opportunity in the world to call in or to send us a message or something with any kind of questions. And as far as a hidden agenda or a conflict of interest, I don't know if there's a single one of us here that's doing this for fun. We're doing this because this is what we truly believe will help our localities and our kids. That's what it all should amount to, is our kids. And sometimes we forget about that.
And when you involve the public, with the masses, it tends to get bogged down with emotion and feeling more so than the future and looking forward. You'll get a lot more looking backwards than you will looking forward. And I think that you've got representatives from all 4 boards bound and determined to make the best decision for their constituents on this stage and on this Zoom call. And it hadn't been easy, but it's something that we're not benefiting fiscally from or monetarily from it. So we've given our time trying to look to the future, trying to get the best opportunities we can for the children that we have coming through the system and the future children that will have come through the system.
So just a time check, we have about 23 minutes. And we still have a few questions. And so this one is around athletics again, but specifically transportation. So if I'm an 8th grader and choose to try out and make a JV team, wouldn't that create additional cost to have me transported to the school where practice is held?
I would think in a lot of cases that would be, Covington's never had an activity bus that would handle such a thing. Eighth graders participating in varsity athletics is possible. It's also,
Not varsity.
well,
Junior varsity.
but it's,
Ninth grade is the one.
right, well, in other localities, in other parts of the state, in other parts of the country. I remember specifically the baseball player Chipper Jones was famously an eighth grader starting for his varsity team. So anytime you have transportation, a more one-off situation like that, to me it would be, Alleghany's had an activity bus that has run, for different times over the years, and I would think it would be handled simply with that. But I'm not sure that situation is expected to come up to such a great degree to add tremendous expense.
No, and you would, you're probably not going to have more than a busload of students that are traveling any one season, any one afternoon to go to the other place to practice. So I think that would be a non-issue.
Okay. So the next one is around the high school and flooding, and there's actually two questions here. So, what happened? Basically, the first question said, how many times has Allegheny High School flooded? And the other one was, what happens if the school floods a third time? So, it's a facilities.
So one of the beauties of this committee is we're made up of all different types of folks with all different backgrounds, and luckily we have an insurance guru on our board over there. So Mr. Franklin, we'll defer this question to you.
I don't know about guru, but I know it flooded in '85, but so did a whole lot of other places never flooded. And Allegheny High School is in a flood zone X. X is the same zone you would be if you was up on top of Peters Mountain. You'd be at X. So it's not in a zone or AE zone. We are a member of VACOR. That's where we get our insurance at. And VACOR provides $100 million worth of insurance, flood insurance, for facilities that are in the X zone, okay? Which we are. So the ugly for that is it's $100 million for the whole VACOR system. So if you had a major flood, like the ones going to Louisiana now, if it hit Virginia, anything in the X zone, if there was 10 schools, then we would share that $100 million. But people think that Allegheny County high school is in a flood zone. That is incorrect. I have the flood maps. VACOR checked them, and we checked them with the insurance companies to make sure what zone we was in. We are not in an A or an AE flood zone.
Okay.
But if Allegheny High School did flood, and we did get that big payment, then we could do a lot of good stuff with that.
And, if it's a total loss, who says we have to build it back there again?
Exactly.
And the government would not want you to build it back there again if you had repetitive flood losses. They want you to move it.
So this next question, you talked about earlier about athletic fields. Will the city of Covington be compensated for any revenue loss by the county if consolidation was to occur and the newly elected school board chose to utilize athletic facilities in Allegheny instead of Covington? And I think you've answered that question, but.
Well, I think the prevailing wisdom from at least some of the teaching professional folks, there's generally speaking more traffic around the middle school than there is a typical high school, especially among parents. And as it relates to economy, typically parents have bigger pocketbooks than do their children. So I think there's something to be said as far as PTA meetings and the different activities at a middle school. There's, I think, a fair argument to be made that there's actually more traffic around the middle school than a typical high school.
Okay.
And who in the world would want to play football games at Allegheny High School if they had Covington available, the Casey Field available? The facility's a whole lot nicer. Especially if you've got visiting teams coming in, things. Yeah, it's a whole lot.
So this question is around process. So this person asked the question, why has there not been a community vote on the merger? A phone poll of 300 people seems to not justify the entire community's opinion.
As it relates to that, what 22.1-25 requires us to show is evidence of community support. So there's two parts to that as we've understood it. The first part is what we're doing here and the continuation of the four bodies who, in this process going forward, would ultimately vote to approve the plan. So that would perhaps be the basis of evidence of community support. I think to sort of dovetail on to what one of the previous questions and what Mr. Gardner was saying, there's two different ways of government tradition in the United States. One is direct democracy and the other is Republican democracy. And our current Board of Supervisors and City Council are excellent examples of a representative democracy. There is not a direct citizen vote on every resolution that comes before those bodies. So this process functions the same way. Community involvement and participation has always been encouraged through a representative democracy format that we're all very used to doing. And again, going back to one of my earlier comments, the law prescribes that this process be done by the two school boards and the two governing bodies coming together, and a historical precedent from our own backyard with Clifton Boards and Allegheny doing the following the same procedure. And was there another part there?
No, that was just a process question that I think somebody was asking. Anybody else wanted to add on? This question, I think, was answered by a number of you as well as Mrs. Spangler, but I just want to make sure I say it in case there's anything else. How will putting the high school at Allegheny help increase enrollment at the vocational school? The city schools went to block schedule to accommodate the enrollment. Did that not increase currently? And I do think that was mentioned, but if there's any additional comments, Mrs. Spangler?
Yeah, it did increase. The enrollment did increase for our Covington students. The year before consolidation, we were in the upper 60 as far as slots that were being used by Covington. And the last 2 years, we've been in the upper 80s. And this year, we're at 105. So it takes a 3-year span for 3 levels, because we go sophomore, junior, senior, level 1, 2, and 3. So it takes 3 years before you really get up to the point. So at this point, we're now on our schedule. We haven't had them come in the building yet, but on the schedule, they're going to be taking 105 slots this year compared to last year at 80 some, and before block scheduling, upper 60s. So it is improving. Hopefully it would stay that way. I know block isn't great for everybody, but it has helped students come into JRTC.
It only makes sense to, if I'm a Covington student and I want to go to JRTC, they got to bus me down there. If I'm down over the hill, I walk up the hill and I'm at JRTC, and there's no transportation to it, and I don't lose any class time.
How much instructional time over a 1-year period is lost through bus transfer? Just ballpark out of curiosity. That you lose from Covington to going to JRTC.
Well, it adds up on both ends because, on block, they're going to have to maybe leave a block early, and then they may get to us late or leave us early. I know our 4th block is the worst, our Covington kids, because they have to get back here. They lose 17 minutes a day in 4th block that the Allegheny students are able to do. Our 3rd block is about 10 minutes. Our 2nd block is about 5, and 1st block is about pretty even. But they do lose time here too.
So there's the answer to that question.
So over the course of a year, those students, those cognitive students lose 51 hours of instructional time only in fourth block, just in fourth block.
And I think Mrs. Spangler talked about the option to offer new programs earlier and new opportunities by having bulk of students. We have just 3 questions left. Some have already been answered, so I will, just for the sake of making sure that I get all the questions. One of them was around the cost that it would take, in this person's estimation, over $1 million in changing of school names, logos, uniforms, building colors. Where is that money going to come from?
It's difficult for us sitting here to estimate exactly what a mascot and school color change would cost. As far as that $1 million estimate, I believe, read just in some of the recent news articles, I believe I remember something at least similar to that from Loudoun County, where Leesburg High School was voluntarily electing to change their name from the Raiders to another mascot. And in that article that I read, the principal there was talking about how just ensconced that mascot was throughout the entire facility. That's also a high school, probably serving 1,500 plus students, so square footage wise, I'm sure it's rather expensive. That was a $1 million estimate from Leesburg High School in Loudoun County. I'm not sure that would directly, correlate to anything that we're doing. In that particular article, the principal was talking about how the Raider mascot was literally, emblazoned on the floor at the basketball arena. So that would have to be, labor would have to be paid for that to be sanded off and the like. There were Raider emblems literally on the corners around hallways and things like that. So each individual situation where you're changing a mascot would be unique, and I think it would be very difficult for us, especially to say, yeah, it would cost $1 million+. I don't think anyone has foreseen that as a major expenditure.
And one huge offset, and both school systems benefit from this, is,
A little higher.
oh, I'm sorry. One benefit that both school systems enjoy is investment by community businesses, for school boards, or scoreboards for signage, different things. And when you've got one system, you've got double the amount of exposure to those businesses and double the investment. And I think that's where you start. They always say a new broom sweeps clean. So you get people excited with the new mascot, the new name. They're buying into a new product, and you go forward with that. Looking at it now, you're seeing a downslide with the, I don't know what you call the Mike Club or the Cougar, quarterback club, involvement's down, investment's down. And I think this is an opportunity to reinvest in our community and the new programs, the new school system. As a business person, I think it would be more, exciting to invest in that.
Also affecting that, at least partially, would be the timeline that we were proposing for a consolidated division. The central offices and the school boards under our proposal would combine on July 1st of 2022, but we would not have a combined student body until the 23-24 school year. So there would be a complete year from the time of the technical merger, almost 2 full years where the division would have, or a year plus, where the division would have time to properly assess what those changeover costs would be. And then to Matt's point, community investments would probably be, especially if the totals were above any sort of estimate, community investment would be leveraged, I would imagine.
Just a little side note, as somebody who went through a name change at a community college, my last one, it was phased in. We did the necessary things, but because the cost was probably, could have been about $100,000. and we couldn't do that, so it certainly was a phase-in. Part of this question was asked around the, how long can the two entities operate if consolidation does not happen, and I think it was talked about, estimated about 5 years. But the piece of this, and I think Mr. Franson mentioned, how much do you anticipate real estate taxes increasing if consolidation does not happen? I don't know if there's any range or.
I think what I talked to Mr. Griffith, I think what I was using as an example is Buena Vista. I think Buena Vista is like $1.40
Okay.
100, and we're like 70 cents. And they're having, if we would have to double our taxes, and they're still having problems, with their budget. So I just know that when we got our financial report from the attorneys when we first started this, they clearly said that it was not sustainable 5 or 6 years, okay? And our school system's gonna have to make it longer than that, right? So we've got to do something. That is the reason I've been so for this, is for the kids.
And I know that in the, I'm not exactly sure what the rate is in the county, but I know in the city, for every 1 cent that they raise real estate taxes, it's only $12,000 gain.
28.
28? Is that the,
Ours is 98, almost $100,000 per foot.
is that real estate or personal property?
Real estate.
Could you imagine the people with fixed incomes get a tax bill that goes up 50% or doubles? It'll be a rack.
So this last question, and then we'll sort of end it with any last comments. It says that the city manager of Covington has stated she has a formula and a plan that will help in providing funds for the joint school system. What is the plan, and can it be shared with the community?
The only plan that I'm aware of, Mr. Unitas, I assume it did say city manager,
Yes.
should reference Mr. Unitas specifically. She was on the finance subcommittee, and again, that funding formula that we talked about of a per pupil basis for the yearly budget process, and then also in the future capital expenditures in the consolidated division. That was unanimously agreed on by the facility subcommittee, so I would assume that would be what the questions would be.
So we have come to no additional questions, but we have about 4 minutes. I look at our co-chairs, if you would like to make any other statements or comments.
Anybody else?
I do have something to say. I do want to say that I think the committees did a great job with planning and the time and the effort and all the work. But as being a part of this joint board, I do want to say that when you put a board together, not everyone always thinks the same. And you should have a board of people that have different ideas, different aspects. And at the beginning of this, I said that I was not for it. And I think there were a lot of concerned people as to why I said that. I'm still not for it. And I don't think that the problem in the city of Covington has anything to do with the schools. We lack job opportunities. And that was one of my main things. We're talking about getting schools together. If there's no jobs, no one's going to come here. And I feel like the localities, we have to ask for money for the schools, and now we're going through this COVID. And the last thing on my mind is school consolidation. I'm trying to figure out if, when the kids go to school, is there going to be this plummeting number of kids getting sick. I hope we all can be friends, and I'm just sorry, this is what I feel, this is my gut. I don't feel like this is what we should be doing. There were times when we said that we want to offer the kids so much more, we talked about sports. School's not about sports, but for some kids, that's all they have. And if you have 40 people from one school coming out for football, and 40 that was from Covington, but we're joint board now, we're not gonna have 80 people on the team. And if you're in 10th, 11th, or 12th, if you're gonna play, you have to be on varsity. There's not gonna be 30 or even 40 people on the football team. So this is just what I feel. Like I said, I think this plan, Jonathan has kept me in touch, and I've just had a lot of things going through my mind concerning this. Like I said, we said it's about the kids. I don't see that. So, we'll go from here and see what happens. Something might change. But for me, this is how I feel.
Stuart, Doctor? Daryl?
Maybe you just want to share the next steps and the timeline.
So, the next step, one thing I want to tell the board is that we're going to be getting a proof of all the other copies of this book tomorrow. I'm going to go check out the proof in Roanoke, and then I'll have one for all of your committees, all of your separate boards. I know that the two school boards will be presenting this to their boards on the 31st. Then myself and Mr. Eric will be going to the respective the Board of Supervisors and the City Council on the 1st. The Allegheny County School Board will be holding a meeting on the 9th of September, a public hearing, and that is when we will vote on whether we approve the consolidation plan or the resolution for consolidation. Covington will be following us on the 10th, and then both the Board of Supervisors and the City Council will be voting on the 15th. So if any of you all would like to go to those meetings and voice your opinions, you're more than welcome to. They are all going to have some sort of public hearing to discuss the facts. And if anyone is interested in getting all of our information, we're happy to give you a link to get any of the information you would like and download it, or if that is something that is not you're not able to do, we can help you get a hard copy of it. So thank you, Dr. Renoni, and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce, and thank all of you all for being here and for all the questions.
Thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you.